Be me. Just turned 40, settled into my dream home, a quiet corner unit. Retired early from systems architecture. All I wanted was peace, my meticulously kept garden, and my companion, Chairman Meow, a dignified Persian whose purr was my personal zen. Thought I'd escaped corporate politics for good. Turns out some battlefields are just smaller. Be not me. Brenda President Sterling. New to the HOA board, swept in on a wave of promises about modernizing the community and upholding standards. Mid-50s, sharp bob, eyes that seemed to constantly scan for imperfections. Her personal mission: transform our relaxed, mature neighborhood into a pristine, soulless brochure image, starting with anything that remotely suggested individuality. My quaint bird bath was already on her radar. Chairman Meow's occasional sunbathing on my enclosed patio. A future crisis in the making, apparently. It started subtly. A polite but firm notice about the height of my ornamental grasses, citing a newly interpreted bylaw. I trimmed them, didn't want trouble. Then came the urgent memo regarding permissible garden ornaments. My vintage, tasteful bird bath, a gift from my late grandmother, was deemed an unapproved permanent fixture. My appeal, citing the decades it had stood there without issue, was shot down by Brenda. Grandfather clauses were a relic of lax management, she claimed. I sighed, took down the bird bath and stored it. I was annoyed, but not yet moved to war. The second volley hit a few weeks later. My sister visited for a long weekend. She parked her car in a designated visitor spot, clearly marked. 2 days later, a sticker on her windshield threatening to tow. I called Brenda directly. "Mrs. Sterling," I began, trying to keep my voice even. "My sister is parked in a visitor spot. It's clearly marked." Her voice was glacial. "Mr. Peterson, the new interpretation of our parking bylaws stipulates a 24-hour limit for visitor parking. After that, they must utilize street parking off-site. Your sister has been there for 48 hours. The sticker is entirely appropriate." I bristled. "That was never communicated. There are no signs. This is an arbitrary change designed to harass. It's in the updated rules and regulations, distributed via email last month. Perhaps you missed it," she purred, the implication clear. "Your fault for not reading my decrees." I ended up having my sister move her car to the street, a considerable walk from my unit, just to avoid further confrontation. The inconvenience was minor, the principle infuriating. My blood pressure was rising, but the real game began when Chairman Meow became a target. My beloved Persian, strictly an indoor cat, loved to sunbathe on my private, fenced patio. It was enclosed, completely invisible from common areas, not even visible from neighboring patios due to clever architectural design. One morning, I received an official notice. Violation, pet on common property. Attached was a grainy photo, taken from some impossible angle, showing Chairman Meow's tail peeking over the top of my patio fence. The accompanying text detailed a new amendment. All pets, regardless of whether they are on owner property or common property, must be leashed and accompanied by an owner when visible from any other unit or common area. Someone had to have climbed onto a roof, or somehow snuck a camera lens through a gap no human should be able to reach. This wasn't just enforcement, it was active, invasive surveillance. This was war. Chairman Meow, a creature of pure dignified fluff, was now a public menace. That was the moment my internal architect, long dormant, began to stir. Brenda Sterling had made it personal. She had threatened the peace of my small kingdom, and worse, my cat's peaceful existence. My initial response was measured. I sent a scathing email, carefully citing privacy laws and the lack of clarity on common property when it came to a fully enclosed patio. Brenda's reply was curt. "The HOA board has the right to interpret bylaws for the collective good. Your pet is a nuisance. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines, potentially leading to a mandatory pet removal order as per Section 7, subsection C of the community bylaws." A mandatory pet removal order. My blood ran cold. Chairman Meow was family. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about absolute power. I considered moving. I considered ignoring it. But then I remembered the countless hours I'd spent designing complex systems, debugging intractable code, predicting human error. This was just another system with a particularly flawed operator. The next HOA meeting was a battlefield. I showed up prepared. My neighbors, mostly older residents who had quietly endured Brenda's reign, nodded supportively. Brenda, flanked by two new board members she'd railroaded into place, ran the meeting with an iron fist. When my agenda item came up, a challenge to the pet visibility rule, she cut me off almost immediately. "Mr. Peterson," she announced, "your petition lacks merit. The board has voted. The rule stands. Your cat is an ongoing problem. We have received multiple complaints." "Multiple complaints," I countered, my voice low but firm. "From whom? Because every neighbor I've spoken to finds Chairman Meow quite delightful." She sneered. "Anonymous complaints are confidential, Mr. Peterson, part of our duty to protect our residents. However, your continued defiance is noted. The board has authorized a weekly fine of $250 for each day your pet is visible from a common area, retroactive to the date of the first notice. Furthermore, if this continues for 2 consecutive weeks, we will issue a formal demand for removal, followed by legal action." $250 a day. For a cat sunbathing on my private patio, that was $1,750 a week. This wasn't about rules. It was about bleeding me dry, forcing me to abandon my cat, or forcing me out of my home. My livelihood, my peace of mind, and Chairman Meow's very presence were under direct assault. The room felt heavy with tension. My long-dormant BOFH protocols began their complete system boot sequence. The fines started arriving, delivered with a smug note from Brenda. I paid them, every single one, not because I agreed, but because I was buying time. Time to build my case, brick by painstaking brick. The first thing I did was download every single HOA document ever published. Bylaws, amendments, meeting minutes, financial reports, architectural guidelines, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and ARS, going back 20 years. I set up a dedicated workspace in my home office, 2 monitors humming, external drives whirring. My architect brain, honed on parsing millions of lines of code and regulatory documents, was in its element. I started with the bylaws themselves. I cross-referenced Brenda's new interpretations against original clauses, state property law, and precedent. Her 24-hour visitor parking rule was indeed a fabrication. The original bylaw specified a 72-hour limit without prior notification, and only for specific limited spaces, not the general visitor lot. Her common property interpretation for my enclosed patio was a direct violation of my deed, which explicitly defined my patio as private property, solely for the use of the unit owner. Next, I turned my attention to Brenda herself. Hypocrisy is a powerful weapon. I spent late nights reviewing aerial photographs of the community, cross-referencing public property records and city permits. I noticed Brenda's property had a rather large, recently constructed gazebo in her backyard. Gazebos require architectural review and specific permits. There was no record of either in the HOA archives, nor with the city. A small detail, perhaps, but a chink in the armor. I also delved into the HOA financials. Brenda had pushed through a series of beautification projects shortly after becoming president. Large contracts were awarded to a landscaping company and a painting company. I pulled the public records for these companies. The landscaping company, Sterling Gardens, was owned by Brenda's brother-in-law. The painting company, Pristine Paints, was owned by her cousin. Classic conflict of interest. Both companies were charging premium rates, far above market value. There were no competitive bids documented, a clear violation of Section 4, subsection E of the Financial Transparency Bylaws. The money trail was a direct line from community funds to Brenda's family. Finally, I focused on the anonymous complaints about Chairman Meow. My patio was genuinely secluded. The idea of multiple complaints was ludicrous. I installed a discreet, high-resolution security camera that covered my entire patio and part of my side yard. Within a week, it caught Brenda Sterling, in broad daylight, wearing dark sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, attempting to lean over my fence with her phone extended, trying to snap a picture of Chairman Meow. The video footage was pristine, time-stamped, and damning. She was not just interpreting rules, she was actively manufacturing evidence and violating my privacy. My plan was precise: expose the arbitrary rules, reveal her personal violations, unveil the financial fraud, and shatter her credibility using her own manufactured evidence against her. I assembled a dossier, hundreds of pages of documentation, legal precedents, city codes, detailed financial spreadsheets, and the high-resolution video evidence. I even got a sworn affidavit from a local land surveyor, confirming my patio was indeed private property. I scheduled a special board meeting, not through the usual channels, but by formally petitioning the entire community as per the bylaws, citing urgent matters of fiduciary responsibility and ethical conduct. It bypassed Brenda's control entirely. She was furious, but legally she couldn't stop it. The special board meeting was packed. Brenda sat at the head of the table, an aura of icy disdain radiating from her. She clearly thought this was another one of my futile protests. I stood before the community, a thick binder in my hand. "Good evening, neighbors," I began, my voice calm, almost conversational. "We're here today not just to discuss my cat, but the integrity of our entire community." Brenda scoffed. "Let's not be dramatic, Mr. Peterson. This is about your continued defiance of pet regulations." "On the contrary, Mrs. Sterling," I replied, opening my binder to a marked tab. "This is about your defiance of nearly every founding principle of our HOA. Let's start with my patio. According to my deed and verified by a licensed land surveyor, this space is private property. Any rule about leashing pets on common property does not apply. Furthermore, any attempt to define private property as common property is a direct violation of state property law, not just our bylaws." I passed around copies of the deed, the surveyor's report, and the relevant state statute. Whispers rippled through the room. "Nonsense," Brenda interjected, her face reddening. "The board has the right to interpret and violate privacy," I pressed, pulling out a USB drive. "Because my security camera captured you, Mrs. Sterling, actively attempting to photograph Chairman Meow over my fence. Here's the footage." I projected the video onto the large screen. The room gasped as Brenda's shadowy figure, hat and sunglasses prominent, awkwardly tried to spy on my cat. "This," I continued, "is not anonymous complaining. This is targeted harassment and a clear invasion of privacy. You manufactured the very evidence you used to fine me $250 a day." Brenda's composure began to crack. "That's a lie. You're fabricating evidence." "Am I?" I leaned into the microphone. "Perhaps we should discuss another fabrication. Your gazebo, Mrs. Sterling. A beautiful addition, but one built without HOA architectural approval and without city permits. A direct violation of Section 3, Subsection B of our own CC and Rs, not to mention city zoning codes. The fines for that, by the way, are substantial and retroactive." I projected aerial photos, her property highlighted, no permits on file. The whispers grew louder, turning into murmurs of outrage. Brenda was pale. "This is a personal attack, slander." "No, Mrs. Sterling," I said, a dangerous calm in my voice. "This is accountability." Which brings us to the most egregious violation: our community's finances. You approved contracts for beautification projects totaling over $70,000 to Sterling Gardens and Pristine Paints. "Can you confirm the ownership of those companies, Mrs. Sterling?" she stammered. "They are reputable vendors." "They are owned by your brother-in-law and your cousin," I stated, projecting public records showing the familial connections. And there were no competitive bids, a clear breach of fiduciary duty in Section 4. Subsection E, you funneled community funds directly into your family's pockets for work that was wildly overpriced. The room erupted. Fraud, corruption. Get her out. Brenda sprang up, her face a mask of fury and fear. You think you can get away with this, Peterson? I run this board. Not anymore, I said, a small, grim smile finally touching my lips. Because I've also filed a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's office, citing racketeering, embezzlement, and a pattern of deceptive practices. I attached this entire dossier. They were particularly interested in the financial transactions and the manufactured evidence. Her eyes widened, the arrogance draining from them, replaced by a raw, naked terror. She looked around the room, seeing only furious faces, betraying nods from her former allies. Her empire of petty tyranny was crumbling before her eyes. The meeting devolved into chaos. Brenda, utterly defeated, stormed out, her carefully constructed facade shattered. The community was in an uproar, demanding her immediate removal. An emergency vote was held then and there. She was unanimously ousted from the board, effective immediately, her authority evaporating like mist. The fallout was swift and devastating for Brenda. The Attorney General's office moved quickly. Their initial investigation confirmed my findings. Multiple instances of financial mismanagement, clear conflicts of interest, and the deliberate creation of false pretenses to fine residents. The HOA itself, under the interim board, faced significant legal challenges and a complete overhaul of its governance structure. Brenda Sterling wasn't just removed from the board, she faced formal charges. The embezzlement of HOA funds, even relatively small amounts, coupled with the pattern of harassment and privacy invasion, turned it into a serious criminal matter. Her reputation in the community was ruined, her social standing in tatters. Her own home, the beautiful unit she lorded over, suddenly felt like a prison. The fines for her unpermitted gazebo alone, retroactively applied by the city once the AG got involved, amounted to thousands of dollars, coupled with a mandatory demolition order if not brought to code within a month. Her personal financial situation, already leveraged by her overspending, became precarious. She was truly undone, not by an emotional outburst, but by the cold, hard logic of the system she thought she controlled. Update: 2 weeks later, Brenda Sterling's home went up for sale, quietly. No open houses, just a single, discreet sign. Turns out, the city fines and legal fees from the AG's investigation put her in a deep hole. The new interim HOA board officially rescinded all the arbitrary rules she'd imposed. My bird bath is back. Chairman Meow is once again enjoying his sunbathing sessions, completely unbothered. The general mood in the community is one of collective relief and a renewed sense of camaraderie. People are actually talking to each other again, not just nodding stiffly. Update: 1 month later, Brenda's house sold for significantly less than she paid, a distressed sale due to the outstanding code violations and the lingering scandal. She's reportedly moved out of state to a community with stricter, more sensible rules. Irony: thy name is Brenda Sterling. The HOA has begun the process of recovering the embezzled funds from her family's companies. It's a slow process, but the AG's office is on it. Justice, it seems, is methodical, just like a good revenge. Update: 3 months later, the HOA has a new, properly elected board. They've reinstated sensible community standards, focused on actual maintenance, and even started a community garden project. Chairman Meow received an official honorary community ambassador certificate, complete with a paw print stamp from the new board. They even installed a small, tasteful pet comfort station near the walking path, with water bowls and waste bags, because, as the new president put it, we should encourage community, not punish it. My personal zen has returned. Sometimes, you just have to debug the system, even when the system is your entire neighborhood.